9:58 a.m. Mercy Valley Hospital, Dallas. A young doctor is rushing to save a patient when the hospital director suddenly shoves her to the floor in the middle of the hallway. Everyone sees it, but no one dares to speak. The director thinks he controls everything inside that hospital. What he doesn't notice is the police officer walking in downstairs, and the K-9 beside him has already sensed something wrong. Seconds later, the dog runs straight toward the scene because years ago, that same K-9 once saved this doctor's life. And today he's about to expose a secret the hospital tried to bury. Stay with us because this story will leave you speechless. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel.
Monday, 9:58 a.m. Mercy Valley Hospital, downtown Dallas, Dallas, Texas. The second-floor hallway at Mercy Valley always smelled like disinfectant and coffee that had been reheated too many times. Overhead, fluorescent panels buzzed faintly, turning every surface, tile, steel, glass, into something too bright, too honest. The hospital's wall posters promised compassion in clean fonts and friendly colors. But everyone who worked here knew the real rules were quieter and sharper. Doctor. Emily Carter moved fast, shoulders tight, a file pressed to her chest as if it could protect her. The label on the front wasn't subtle. John Keller, Lincoln Street Shelter. Her ER pager kept vibrating in her pocket, a nervous heartbeat that wouldn't stop. Behind her, she heard the rhythm of the hospital waking up. Nurses trading updates, wheels rolling, a child crying somewhere near the stairwell. It sounded like an ordinary morning, until it didn't. Hospital director Richard Coleman stepped into her path near the elevators like he'd been waiting for the exact moment she couldn't dodge him. His suit was immaculate, tailored, expensive, the kind of clothing that announced authority before he spoke. But his face carried none of that polished calm. His jaw was tight, eyes cold, and there was a flush at his throat that meant anger was already in motion. "Did you approve a surgery for a shelter patient without a deposit?" he asked. The question wasn't really a question. It was an accusation designed to make anyone nearby remember who ran this place. Emily kept her voice controlled, professional. "He was bleeding internally. Fast scan was positive. He was unstable. If we waited, he would die." Coleman leaned in closer, lowering his voice like he was doing her a favor by not humiliating her louder. "This hospital isn't a charity. You don't make that call." Emily's fingers tightened around the file. She tried to step around him, tried to keep moving, tried to keep the day from becoming about her instead of the patients. "In an emergency," she said, "a deposit isn't—" Coleman's hand shot out. Not a warning touch, not a restraining grip, a shove, hard and precise, driving her shoulder into the wall. Pain flashed bright in her arm and she lost her balance. The file slipped from her hands, popped open, and papers scattered across the tile like startled birds. Emily fell. Her elbow struck the floor with a sharp crack that stole air from her lungs. For a moment, the hallway froze. A few nurses stopped walking. A transporter paused with a stretcher. Someone in scrubs looked down and then quickly looked away, like eye contact itself was dangerous. No one spoke. They had seen Coleman's temper before. They also knew what happened to people who challenged him. Sudden schedule changes, performance issues that didn't exist yesterday, write-ups that appeared like bruises, and quiet firings that came with forced smiles. Emily pushed herself up with her good hand, breathing hard, fighting the heat behind her eyes. Her elbow throbbed and her pulse sounded loud in her ears. Coleman glanced around with ownership, like the hallway belonged to him. In many ways it did. Then the glass doors at the main entrance opened downstairs. Officer Daniel Brooks from the Dallas Police Department walked into the lobby with his K-9 partner, Rex, a large German shepherd with alert eyes and a controlled, confident stride. Brooks wasn't here for drama. He wasn't here on a call. He was here for a records review tied to an anonymous complaint filed 2 months ago, one that claimed Mercy Valley was refusing emergency care unless patients paid large deposits first. Brooks didn't know anything about what had just happened upstairs. But Rex did something unusual the second he stepped onto the hospital floor. He stopped walking. His ears lifted. His body went still, not rigid with fear, but focused like a compass snapping to north. his eyes fixed down the corridor leading toward the elevators. A low warning growl rolled from his chest, quiet but unmistakable. Brooks tightened the leash instinctively, scanning the lobby. "Rex," he said, calm and trained. "Heel." Rex didn't lunge. He didn't panic. He simply refused to pretend everything was normal. Brooks followed Rex's stare straight toward the elevators, toward the second floor, towards something Rex had already decided mattered. And in that moment, Mercy Valley's quiet fear, so practiced, so routine, started to crack.
The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Brooks stepped out into the second-floor corridor. Rex moved first, pulling forward with a tension that wasn't chaotic, just determined, like he'd smelled danger before Brooks could see it. "Heel," Brooks repeated, firmer. Rex didn't obey the way he usually did. He wasn't disobeying out of excitement. He was locked in. Nurses stepped back as Rex moved straight down the hall. A few visitors pressed themselves against the wall, eyes wide. K9 units had a way of changing the air in a room. People stopped talking. People made space. Rex reached Emily, who was half sitting on the floor with her papers scattered around her like evidence. He stopped directly in front of her, not beside her, not behind her. In front, like a shield. Rex barked once at Coleman, loud enough that the nurses' station turned their heads in unison. The sound wasn't frantic. It was a boundary. Emily looked up, stunned, her elbow burning and her breathing uneven. The word came out small, almost disbelieving. "Rex?" Brooks blinked. "You know him?" Emily swallowed, throat tight. I do." Rex lowered his head and gently touched Emily's hand with his nose, slow and careful, as if confirming she was real, as if confirming she was safe enough to be found again. Brooks watched, confused. Rex was trained for public safety, detection, control, not comfort, not tenderness. Yet Rex's body language was unmistakably protective. He positioned his shoulder between Emily and Coleman like he was closing a door. Coleman lifted his chin, anger sharpening now that a uniformed witness stood in the hallway. "This is a staff issue," he said. "Officer, you're here for paperwork." Brooks didn't answer immediately. His gaze moved from Coleman to Emily, reading the scene, her position on the floor, the papers, the way her face held pain she was trying not to show. He kept his voice measured. "Doctor, are you okay?" Emily tried to sit up straighter. "I'm fine." Rex growled again, deeper this time, like a warning that he didn't believe the lie she was using to survive. Brooks shifted his stance slightly so his body angled between Coleman and Emily. "Sir," he said to Coleman, "did you push her?" Coleman's smile was cold and practiced. "She fell." Emily's throat tightened. The lie was casual, effortless, like it was normal here, like the truth didn't matter unless someone powerful wanted it to. The hallway felt smaller, like the walls had leaned in. Some years ago, September 2014, 3:22 p.m., Willow Creek Street, Fort Worth, Texas. Emily was 13, walking home with a heavy backpack cutting into her shoulders. The day had been ordinary in the way childhood often is, until a stranger's hand snapped around her wrist near a parked car. She screamed, but the street was quiet, the sound swallowed by heat and distance. The man pulled her toward the car door, voice low and urgent, and Emily's mind went bright with panic, too fast to think, too slow to run. Then a patrol car turned the corner. A door opened. A German Shepherd launched out. Rex. He hit the ground running and got between Emily and the attacker with a force that felt like protection made physical. He didn't touch Emily. Not once. He didn't grab her, didn't crowd her, didn't scare her. He blocked danger, not her. Rex drove the man backward, pinned him with controlled aggression, and held him until an officer cuffed him. Emily remembered one detail more than anything. Rex's focus. Rex's certainty. Like he had decided Emily would live and the world would simply have to accept it. Emily looked at Brooks, eyes shining with tears she didn't want anyone to see. Her voice dropped to something quiet and honest. "He saved me before." Brooks stared at Rex, then back at Coleman. Something in Brooks hardened, not anger, Not yet, but clarity. I need you to step away from her. Coleman's jaw tightened. You don't tell me what to do inside my hospital. Rex barked again, and then the moment changed. Rex turned his head sharply toward the far end of the hallway, toward the records corridor. An administrator stood near a doorway, frozen like a man caught in a spotlight. His badge read, Mark Delaney, Compliance Office. Mark's face went pale. His lips parted as if he wanted to speak, but no sound came. He took one step back. Rex wasn't only reacting to violence. He was reacting to fear that had a reason. A crowd formed in slow motion. Nurses, visitors, a patient in a gown holding onto an IV pole like it was a cane. No one moved too fast. Everyone watched like they were afraid the wrong breath might make something worse. Coleman raised his voice, trying to fill the space with authority. Back to work, all of you. Now. For a moment, it almost worked. Heads lowered, feet shifted. People started to turn away, pulled by habit. Mercy Valley's oldest rule tried to reassert itself. Silence is safety. Then a nurse stepped out from behind the station. She was middle-aged, with tired eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too often. Her badge read, Sarah Mitchell, RN, 19 years. Her hands were shaking, but her voice wasn't. I saw it, she said. Coleman snapped his head toward her, eyes narrowing. Sarah, don't. Sarah didn't stop. He pushed Dr. Carter into the wall. The hallway went quiet in a heavy, decisive way, like a courtroom when someone finally says the thing everyone knows is true. Brooks looked directly at Sarah. You're willing to give a statement? Sarah swallowed, then nodded once. Yes. A young intern stepped forward next, Jacob Lee, still wearing his short white coat like armor he wasn't sure would hold. His voice trembled, but he forced the words out. It's not just today, Jacob said. This has happened before. Coleman's expression shifted. Not anger, warning. The kind of look that asked, who do I destroy first? Emily tried to stand, pain shooting through her elbow like electricity. Rex stayed close, still positioned between her and Coleman, body language stating what no one else dared to. Not again. Brooks kept his tone controlled. Before, explain. Jacob's voice shook harder now, but the dam had cracked. Patients getting delayed until they give deposits. People being transferred out when they shouldn't be. Complaints disappearing. Emily felt sick, not because she didn't know, because she did. Because hearing it said out loud made it real in a way she couldn't keep compartmentalized. Her memory slammed into a face she wished she could forget. Some months ago, January 2026, 2:15 p.m. Mercy Valley ER, Dallas. Luis Ramirez, a construction worker, came in with crushing chest pain and sweat so heavy it looked like someone had poured water over him. His address listed Cedar Park Avenue. Emily had pushed for immediate treatment. ECG, labs, cardiology consult. She had already started writing orders with the urgency of someone who knew the clock was a knife. Then Coleman came down to the ER himself, his presence changing the atmosphere, the way a storm changes air pressure. No deposit, he said. No cath lab, Emily had argued. She remembered her own voice rising, the look in the nurse's eyes that begged her to stop before she got herself fired. Luis was loaded into an ambulance for transfer to another hospital across town. He died on the way back to Present Mile 10:10 a.m. Emily's voice cracked as she spoke, and the crack was the sound of guilt finally being forced into daylight. Luis Ramirez should still be alive. Small reactions rippled through the crowd. Gasps, hands covering mouths, someone whispering, I remember him. Sarah's face tightened. She swallowed hard. I remember his wife calling, she said. She kept asking if we would help. Coleman tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out too thin, too forced. This is not a courtroom. These people don't know what they're talking about. Brooks stepped closer, the law stepping into a space the hospital had guarded for too long. Actually, he said, I'm here because someone reported this hospital for refusing emergency care. And now I have a doctor assaulted in front of witnesses. Rex stared down the hallway again, toward Mark Delaney. Mark's eyes darted. He turned and started walking away fast. Brooks saw it instantly. "Sir, stop!" Mark didn't stop. He ran. Mark Delaney sprinted toward the records wing like a man trying to outrun his own name. His shoes slapped tile too loudly. His breathing sounded ragged, panicked, like he already knew there was no version of this where he stayed clean. Rex lunged forward. Brooks released just enough leash to give Rex room without losing control, then followed, fast, focused, adrenaline rising, but disciplined. Staff pressed themselves against walls to make space, faces pale as they watched a police K-9 unit move through their workplace like a blade through fabric. Rex didn't attack Mark. He cut him off, fast, controlled, precise, blocking the corridor with his body and barking hard. Mark tried to stop, but his momentum betrayed him. He stumbled, tripped over his own feet, and a folder flew from his hands. It hit the floor and popped open. Papers slid across the tile. Emily reached the corridor just as the elevator doors opened again and a woman stepped out with a badge already in her hand, like she'd been ready for this moment all along. 10:19 a.m. Mercy Valley Hospital, Dallas. Detective Laura Bennett, Dallas Financial Crimes Unit, had been investigating Mercy Valley for 6 months. She had the posture of someone who lived in evidence and didn't get impressed easily. Bennett looked down at the spilled papers and went still. Her eyes moved over the pages the way a surgeon reads a scan, quickly, precisely, with dawning certainty. "Those are deleted patient files," she said. Coleman had followed behind them, trying to regain control with volume, with intimidation, with the old tricks. "Those documents are protected," he snapped. Bennett didn't even look at him. She looked at Brooks. "Officer, you need to detain him. Now!" Coleman's confidence cracked for the first time, just a hairline fracture but visible. "You can't just—" Bennett held up a warrant. "Yes, we can." Mark Delaney started crying before anyone even touched him. His shoulders shook like his body had been carrying this weight for too long and had finally lost the ability to hold it up. "I didn't want this," he said, voice breaking. "I didn't want any of it." Brooks kept his voice firm. "Then talk." Mark looked at Coleman the way trapped people look at locked doors. "He made me delete complaints," Mark blurted. "He made me reroute billing. He threatened my job. He threatened my family." Coleman's voice cut through the corridor like a slap. "He's lying!" But Rex kept barking. Each bark timed like punctuation, cutting off Coleman's attempts to drown the truth in noise. It was as if Rex understood something humans often forgot. Fear changes how people speak, but it doesn't erase what's real. Bennett gathered the papers carefully, flipping to a sheet with a bold label. Deposit refusal log, Mercy Valley Internal. Names, times, dollar amounts, notes, outcomes. Emily's hands went cold when she saw it. Luis Ramirez. Bennett nodded once, slow and grim. "This is bigger than misconduct," she said. "This is a system." Coleman raised his voice again, reaching for the only weapon he trusted, authority. "You don't understand hospital operations." Bennett finally looked at him, eyes flat. "I understand fraud." Police cars lined the curb. The morning had turned into a public scene, radios, uniforms, cameras appearing from nowhere. Coleman was walked out in cuffs, face stiff with disbelief and rage. Mark Delaney followed, crying head down like a man who had survived something by becoming part of it. Nurses watched through glass doors, some scared, some relieved, some simply stunned that the world had finally noticed what they had been swallowing for years. Emily stood with Brooks and Bennett while Rex sat at her side, calm now, as if the most dangerous part, silence, had been broken. 12:15 p.m. Mercy Valley Courtyard, Dallas. Emily sat on a bench under a tree, elbow wrapped, the bandage clean and white against her skin. Now that the hallway adrenaline had faded, she looked exhausted in a way that was deeper than physical. like her body had finally decided it was safe enough to feel everything. Rex walked to her and rested his head gently on her knee. Emily whispered almost to herself, "You showed up again." Brooks spoke quietly. "Some bonds don't disappear." Bennett's phone buzzed. She checked the screen, her expression tightening. "We're not done," she said. "We still need the missing evidence. The files someone hid on purpose." Rex lifted his head and looked back toward the building. Not like a dog staring at a door, like a partner recognizing a trail, like he already knew where the truth was hiding. The conference room had the kind of light that made everyone look tired. Pale walls, a long laminate table, and a narrow window that faced downtown buildings like a reminder that the world outside kept moving whether you told the truth or not. Temporary administrators from Dallas County Health Services had arrived in a quiet wave, clipboards, badges, careful expressions. They didn't look like people who wanted to be noticed. They looked like people trained to walk into broken systems without setting off the alarms. A security officer stood near the back wall, arms folded, eyes flicking from face to face. Emily sat near the window with Officer Brooks and Detective Bennett. Her elbow was wrapped now, but the pain had settled into something deeper, less sharp, more constant, like the body's way of saying this happened no matter how much her mind wanted to press it down. Rex lay near the door, head up, ears angled forward. He wasn't restless. He was watchful, the kind of stillness that wasn't relaxation, but readiness. Bennett spoke first, her voice calm, procedural. "We're going to take statements in order. Witnesses, staff, then compliance. We'll also—" The door opened fast. A young woman rushed in holding a small photo. Her face was wet with tears. Hair pulled back like she hadn't slept, like she'd been living in a week that never ended. She paused just inside the doorway, chest rising too quickly, eyes searching as if she wasn't sure she belonged in a room where official people sat in rows. "My name is Maria Ramirez," she said, voice tight and shaking. You said Luis Ramirez." The room went silent. Not the old Mercy Valley silence, the fearful one. This was different. This was the kind of silence people fall into when something sacred walks in. Maria stepped forward and placed the photo on the table with both hands, as if she was laying down proof of a life. The photo showed Luis in a living room with two small kids. He was mid-laugh, one arm around a child, face open and alive in a way that hurt to look at. "That was my husband," Maria said. "He went to your ER and he didn't come home." Emily's throat tightened so hard she felt like she might choke. She stood slowly, careful with her elbow. "Maria," her voice broke. She forced it steady. "I'm so sorry." Maria didn't yell. That was the worst part. Rage would have been easier to hold. Her voice was quiet and shattered. "My son kept his shoes on that night," she said, looking down at the photo instead of at Emily. "He said Dad will be home soon. We should be ready." Emily raised a hand to her mouth, fingers pressing against her lips like she could physically hold her emotions in place. Her eyes blurred. She had seen death. She had spoken to families. But this was a consequence that had been prevented and still happened. Brooks asked gently, "Did you file a complaint, ma'am?" Maria nodded. "Yes. I called. I emailed. I went in person." Her mouth trembled. "Someone called me back and told me the record didn't exist, that Luis wasn't in the system, like he never—" She stopped, breath hitching. "Like my husband never mattered." Bennett leaned forward slightly, voice softer but precise. "That's the part we're looking for. Missing records, deleted complaints." Maria reached into her bag again, hands shaking, and pulled out a folded letter with creases so deep it looked like it had been opened and closed 100 times. "This was in Luis's jacket," she said. "He wrote it some days before he died. He said if anything happens, show this to someone who will listen." Emily took the letter with trembling hands. The paper felt thin, ordinary, like it wasn't meant to carry something this heavy. She unfolded it carefully. Luis's handwriting wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. It was plain, working man handwriting, the kind that makes the words feel more honest. He wrote that he'd been scared about his heart for a while. He wrote that he didn't have insurance. He wrote that he was afraid that if he went to the wrong place, people would see his lack of money before they saw his pain. Emily's voice came out rough. He mattered. Maria's eyes flashed, not with anger at Emily, but with the desperate hunger of someone who needs the world to confirm what she already knows. Then why did they let him die? Emily's chest tightened. She didn't offer a comfort lie. She didn't say, sometimes we can't save everyone. She didn't hide behind medicine. She swallowed and said the truth that had been trapped in her for months. Because people were afraid, Emily said, and because someone made fear into policy. A few of the administrators exchanged glances, writing faster now. Bennett said, Maria, would you be willing to provide a formal statement and copies of that letter? Maria nodded. Yes, whatever you need. Then her voice lowered. I don't want revenge. I want truth. And I want it to stop happening to other people. Rex stood up. The movement was slow, careful, non-threatening. He walked toward Maria like he was approaching a fragile thing. Maria flinched at first, instinct, then froze as Rex stopped at a respectful distance and sat. Rex lowered his head slightly, eyes calm. Maria blinked, surprised. Her daughter, small, quiet, half hidden behind Maria's leg, stepped forward and reached out with cautious fingers. She touched Rex's ear the way children test the world, gentle and unsure. Maria whispered, He's gentle. Brooks exhaled quietly. He's trained, he said. Then, almost reluctantly, but he also chooses people. Bennett's phone rang. She stood, stepped outside, listened, then came back in fast, face focused. We found a sealed storage room in the basement, she said. It's listed as old supplies, but it's alarmed like a records vault. Emily looked at Brooks, and something in her expression changed from grief to direction. That's where the truth is. Rex turned and walked back to the door, then stopped, waiting, like he was ready to lead them. The basement smelled like paper and disinfectant, with a faint metallic edge like old pipes and stale air. The lights flickered with a tired rhythm, as if the building itself didn't want to look too closely at what it kept down here. A maintenance supervisor named Hank Morrison stood near a heavy door with a ring of keys in his hand. He looked like a man who had spent years learning when not to ask questions. Sweat dotted his forehead, even though it was cold. This room wasn't supposed to be in use, Hank said. Coleman told us never to open it, said it was liability. Bennett held up the warrant again, a piece of paper that suddenly felt like a battering ram. We're opening it now. Hank swallowed and unlocked the door, the latch released with a sound that felt too final. The door swung open. Inside were filing cabinets, sealed boxes stacked in uneven towers, and one old metal cabinet bolted directly to the wall, like someone didn't want it moved even by accident. A thin layer of dust coated the top surfaces. The air was cooler in the room, stiller, like it hadn't been disturbed in a long time. Rex walked in first, nose working, steps slow and deliberate. Jacob Lee whispered from behind, voice low, nervous. How would a dog even know? Brooks answered without looking away from Rex. He knows when something's hidden, that's his job. Rex moved past 2 shelves, paused, then stopped at the bolted cabinet. He sniffed near the seam, then barked once, short, decisive. Bennett nodded to one of the county staff. Get tools. A crowbar came, then a second. The cabinet resisted at first, metal complaining, bolts holding, but with controlled force they pried it open. The door gave way. Inside were envelopes, patient complaints, unopened, stamped with dates. Some marked urgent. Others had sticky notes in block letters. Remove from system. Emily's hands began to shake as she read names. She didn't recognize all of them, but she recognized enough. The room felt like a graveyard of voices that had tried to speak. Sarah Mitchell stood a step behind Emily, eyes glossy, mouth tight. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. They kept them. Bennett started photographing everything. Each envelope, each label, each date, methodical and relentless. Emily reached for another file. Then she froze. One folder read, Daniel. Her face went pale so quickly it looked like someone had drained the blood from her skin. "That's my dad's friend," she whispered. "He died here." Brooks looked at her sharply. "Here? At Mercy Valley?" Emily nodded once, throat closing. "My father said they delayed him. He wanted to sue. People told him it was impossible." The memory slammed into her with the weight of an old promise. Some years ago. March 2023, 11:20 a.m. Greenwood Avenue, Dallas, Texas. Dallas. Emily sat at her father's kitchen table. Her father held a coffee mug with both hands like it was the only steady thing left in his life. His eyes looked older than they should have. "Daniel died because they delayed him," her father said. "But nobody wants to fight a place this big." Emily cried, wiping her face with the sleeve of her sweatshirt, angry at herself for being young, angry at the world for being normal after something so wrong. "Then who will?" she asked. Her father's voice softened. "Sometimes one person speaks," he said, "and then others find their voice." Back to present. 1:20 p.m. Sarah started crying quietly, the kind of crying that tries not to take up space. "I remember Daniel," she said. "We were told not to document certain conversations. Like it was safer for everyone if it wasn't written down." Bennett looked up from her phone camera, eyes sharp. "This is obstruction," she said. "And it's not just Coleman. Multiple people had access to this room." Brooks flipped through a binder of access logs already pulled from Mark Delaney's folder, sign-in sheets, keycard records, names. "He wasn't the only one," Brooks said grimly. Then Rex moved again. He stepped away from the cabinet and walked toward a cardboard box shoved behind filing cabinets, half hidden like someone had placed it there quickly. Rex pawed at it once, then stepped back. Brooks crouched and pulled the box out. Inside was a USB drive and a small handheld recorder wrapped in a plastic bag like someone knew exactly what moisture could do to evidence. Bennett's eyes narrowed. "That's evidence," she said. Emily's voice came out thin. "What kind?" Bennett answered quietly, and the quiet made it heavier. "The kind that ends careers and starts trials." Upstairs, the hospital was no longer a sealed world. At 2:10 p.m., reporters gathered outside. News vans lined the street. People held phones up, filming. The building looked the same from the outside, but inside the silence had been pulled out by the roots. At 2:30 p.m. in the hospital garden courtyard, Emily sat again, trying to breathe around her own ribcage. Rex lay at her feet, calm. For the first time that day, Emily felt something close to relief. Not because the pain was gone, but because the truth finally had a voice, and Rex had helped bring it out. The investigation office had a different kind of sterility than a hospital. Less clinical, more institutional. Beige walls, harsh overhead lighting. The faint smell of copier toner and old coffee. A long table dominated the room, and now it was covered in boxes from Mercy Valley. Evidence tags, sealed bags, file folders that looked like they'd been handled with shaking hands. Detective Bennett stood at one end, already in motion. She played the handheld recorder first. The audio wasn't perfectly clear, but it didn't need to be. It was voices in meetings, tense, clipped. Emily listened, jaw tight, nausea rising. The words weren't medical. They were accounting. They sounded like people talking about broken equipment, not human bodies. Brooks opened the USB drive under tech supervision. A technician at a nearby workstation created a forensic copy first. No shortcuts, no contamination, everything done the way cases survived courtrooms. Rex, normally calm in offices, stood up. He turned his head sharply and barked once, at a locked evidence box sitting on a shelf. It looked ordinary, but it had a special seal label. "Recovered from basement cabinet." Bennett frowned. "We already logged that." Brooks looked at Rex, then at the box. Then why is Rex reacting? The technician, Neil Patterson, walked over, careful, methodical. He opened the box and examined it like a puzzle. Inside, beneath the standard contents, was another flash drive, smaller, taped to the bottom of the box itself, positioned like someone hoped it would be missed in a quick glance. Emily's stomach turned. Someone wanted this missed. Bennett nodded once. Or someone planted it hoping we wouldn't notice what else was missing. Neil placed it in a separate evidence bag, scanned it, logged it, then loaded the data on an isolated machine. A folder appeared. Coleman Medical Advisors. Bennett leaned closer. That's a private consulting company, she said. We saw its name in the billing redirects. A document opened. Ownership details. Thomas Coleman, Plano, Texas. Relationship, brother of Richard Coleman. Brooks exhaled slowly, as if the air had finally become heavy enough to notice. So the money wasn't just policy, he said. It was profit. Then Neil clicked another file, a video, security footage, date stamped. Emily's breath caught at the timestamp because her body recognized it before her mind finished reading. Some months ago, January 2026, 2:12 p.m., Mercy Valley ER hallway camera. Luis Ramirez lay on a gurney, face slick with sweat, eyes half open, chest rising with effort. Emily stood beside him, pointing at a monitor, speaking urgently to staff. Coleman was in frame too, calm, controlled, shaking his head like he was denying an expense report. The audio was clear enough to slice. Coleman's voice. If he can't pay, move him out. Put it in writing that it was transfer due to capacity. Emily closed her eyes and tears finally fell. Not dramatic, not performative, just the body releasing what it had been forced to carry. He said it, she whispered. He said it out loud. Bennett's face hardened into something almost merciless. This is direct evidence of falsifying medical records, she said. This is criminal. Brooks glanced at Emily. Are you ready to testify? Emily wiped her face with the back of her hand. Her voice steadied, not because she wasn't afraid, but because she knew what fear had cost. Yes, she said. I am. Rex walked to Emily's chair and sat close, shoulder near her knee. Quiet support. Present in the way he had been present when she was 13 and the world had tried to take her. Bennett's phone buzzed with an update. She read it once, then looked up. Thomas Coleman has been located in Plano, she said. A unit is moving. Brooks nodded, eyes narrowing with focus. Then this goes beyond one hospital director, he said. This is a business. Emily stared at the paused frame of Luis on the screen, and the story inside her shifted again, away from helplessness towards something harder. The case that began with one shove in a hallway was now turning into something much bigger, because a K-9 recognized fear, followed it, and didn't let it hide. Richard Coleman sat at his brother Thomas's kitchen counter, sunlight slicing through blinds in neat, harmless stripes. The house smelled like toasted bread and expensive soap, normal things that made the conversation feel even colder. Thomas slid a folder across the granite like it was a menu. Hospitals don't need to deny care to make money, Thomas said. They just need to redirect it. Richard's eyes didn't move much. I want it clean. Thomas tapped the pages. It will look clean. We call it consulting. We create delays. We label transfers. We erase complaints. His tone was casual, instructional, like he was teaching a new hire how to file paperwork. Richard nodded once, almost bored. And if staff resists? Thomas shrugged. Replace them, or scare them until they stop resisting. The blinds clicked softly in the breeze. Outside, a lawn sprinkler ticked. Inside, harm was being designed like a business plan. Back to present, 3:40 p.m. Dallas, Financial Crimes Interview Room. Detective Bennett watched the newly recovered footage again, pausing on Richard Coleman's face as he instructed staff to document it correctly. This isn't negligence, she said. It's management. He built a machine. Brooks stood with arms crossed, jaw tight. And machines need more than one operator. Bennett's phone buzzed. Plano PD has Thomas Coleman in custody. Search teams are executing warrants on his office and home. She looked at Emily. Your statement connects the violence to the policy. Without you, they'll try to call it isolated. Emily's voice was quiet but steady. It wasn't isolated. It was the air we breathed. Rex barked once, sharp, contained, like he agreed with the wording. Emily asked Brooks for one stop before she went home. No cameras, no conference room, just a door that belonged to the consequences. Maria Ramirez opened it slowly. Her eyes were exhausted, as if grief had become a second job. Behind her stood Miguel, 8, and Sophia, 5, small and watchful. Emily spoke gently. Maria, we found video. We found proof. The people responsible will be charged. Maria's expression tightened in a way that wasn't anger. It was survival. Proof doesn't bring him back, she said. I know, Emily replied, and meant it. Miguel stared at Rex with the fearless curiosity kids sometimes have when something feels safe. Is he a police dog? He asked. Brooks nodded. Yes, his name is Rex. Miguel looked up at Emily, voice suddenly smaller. Was my dad scared? Emily didn't offer a lie to make the moment easier. She gave the truth with care. He was scared, she said, but he fought. He wanted to come home. Sophia clutched a toy truck, staring at the floor like she was listening anyway. Maria turned her face away, and her voice cracked. He promised he'd be back before dinner. Emily swallowed hard. Maria, I'm sorry he came to the wrong hospital. Maria looked back at her, eyes wet but steady. Maybe, she said, but you weren't the wrong doctor. That sentence hit Emily like a hand on the shoulder, heavy, grounding. Miguel reached out and Rex leaned slightly into his palm, calm and patient. For the first time, Maria's breathing slowed. Then don't stop, Maria said to Emily. Not when it gets hard. Emily nodded. I won't.